This guy is a great political analyst. He's also served as a political consultant. We get a visit from him from time to time. I wish we had more visits from him. How about it for the great Richard Greene, the Civics Dean? What's up, Richard Greene, the Civics Dean? So,
Hey, man.
I look at these polls every day. There's a new Nate Silver, offering every few hours, and these swing states and swing voters that are going to affect this election, and sadly, this electoral college, which we are slave to, and honestly, there's really more heat than light. It's obviously a dead heat, but you said something that really got my attention, and it was associated with the outcome of this election. And you have a pretty good feel for things. I wonder if you could share some of those thoughts with us right now, Richard.
It is always great to be on with you. You have my number. If you're missing me, if you want me to come on, just call me. I'm back. I went to the DNC, and then the natural next thing is I went to Burning Man. And which is a whole nother show. And then I went to the US Open for my annual daddy-daughter tennis.
Oh, that's terrific. I've just been watching on television. I love the US Open. Love it.
It is my distraction from politics. Although I love the game, not just of tennis, of politics. I think we are likely, and I hate to, again, anything can happen, right? James Comey comes out with we're going to reinvestigate Hillary Clinton a few days before the election and changes the election in 2016. So anybody who tells you they know for sure what's going on is full of it. It's impossible to know what's going to happen, right? That said, as of today, I am pretty certain that Donald Trump's going to be our next president. And
now, show us the math on that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons. Number one, I am deeply concerned. I was at the DNC. It was like Woodstock. It was incredible, peace and love, and people were so excited. And Kamala, she had a great speech, and everybody else had great speeches, and people loved Tim Walz. They loved Tim Walz's kid. It opened everybody's hearts up, and then we got to see Ann Coulter and the Republicans bash this kid for expressing pure, unadulterated love like we've never seen in a political event in American history. That somehow is weird. I mean, it just, the values between the Republicans and Democrats were on such high display. But she's fucking tied. After all of that, and after J.D. Vance, and after the craziness and everything, it's like people just love their Donald Trump. And the only way we move forward, it's not going to be the swing voters. How many swing voters are there? What, like 11 in the whole country? I mean, people have pretty much made up their mind. There's going to be 80 to 100 million non-voters, including people that every single person watching this and listening to this knows. Your kids, their friends, your brother, your sister, whatever. I'm just sick of it. I don't really like Kamala, but I can't vote for Trump. I'm going to stay home, right? That's the audience. That's the cohort of Americans that are desperately needed for us to win this. And if we can get the non-voters who don't understand enough about the threat of another Donald Trump presidency. And by the way, there was a fantastic piece that you played by Mehdi, and because everybody says that to me, we don't want World War III, and Trump has kept us out of wars, and he would have stopped Putin from invading Ukraine, which is BS. He would have stopped Hamas. Donald Trump has a lot of sway with Hamas, apparently. He would have stopped Hamas from attacking Israel, right? So all of this, but people buy it because Donald Trump, as I've said on your show so many times, Mark, is the Michael Jordan of con man in the history of the world. He's just so good at it. And rational people like you and I look at it and go, how can anyone believe it? But he goes deep deep into people's subconscious. So first of all, I'm concerned about the lack of bounce from the convention, the fact that we're tied in the swing states. Secondly,
Neither party got the bounce, though, Richard.
I know, but we had every reason to have a bounce.
You're saying the momentum was clearly there with the Democrats, and there should have been a bounce. Okay.
Well, I mean, imagine, so we don't get a bounce with Kamala. Imagine if the 81-year-old guy was still there, right?
Sure,
I mean,
no, of course, but she has pulled. I'm glad you mentioned it because she has pulled even from the where the 81-year-old guy was, and the a million more people. I think it's not a lot, maybe a little north of a million more people saw that last night at the Democratic National Conventions. I mean, you can see how there's a curiosity factor and maybe an enthusiasm around the Democrats. And I'm a pessimist, so but I do think I do think you have to acknowledge that she's got some heat.
She does. And I think my 95-year-old mother, who and she does TikToks that do way better than mine on my @Civics TikTok page. She said Kamala will rise to the occasion. And she has. But here's the problem. We have 2 months exactly from today. I predicted a long time ago that regardless who the opponent was going to be, that Trump was going to run the dirtiest, most vicious campaign that made the Willie Horton kinds of approach. Remember Willie Horton?
Sure.
That against Michael Dukakis, totally based on sexism. She's a woman. She's this short, incompetent, not strong, Asian Black woman, right? And he's going to pound that. So we have not seen the impact of that, right? Also, we have the Bobby Kennedy factor. Let me share the math with you on that, because people, I think, are misunderstanding this, right? So let's say Bobby Kennedy were to get 5% of the 5 million voters in Georgia, right? So what is that? 250,000 voters, okay? He was going to get those 250,000 voters, but instead, because he's advocating and endorsing Donald Trump, let's say 75,000 of those 250,000 people that were going to vote for Bobby and waste their vote turn and vote for Trump. 75,000 more than turn and vote for Kamala, for example, right? Georgia was won last time by 11.
Oh,
so Bobby Kennedy,
Georgia was, say it again. Georgia was won by, that's 11,700. You can go ahead. Say it, though, completely. You dropped out for a second.
11,779 votes. That's why Trump said, I just need 11,780 more votes, right? Just find me those votes, right? So a tiny, tiny, tiny shift from voting for Bobby Kennedy to voting for Donald Trump, especially when you have that insane, crazy man, Elon Musk, doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on Donald Trump. There's just a lot of energy and movement in that direction. And then, quite honestly, I do not think we're properly factoring in the fact that when people go to the polls, and it cost Hillary Clinton the election, and Hillary Clinton was white, and she was stronger in many ways as a candidate than Kamala. When people have to decide on who their alpha leader is, that's going to keep them safe. And that is the core Maslow's hierarchy of needs decision-making process that goes in on a subconscious level when we vote. I think that they're going to get nervous and they're not going to be able to pull the trigger. And then the last thing is my Jewish brothers, my Jewish friends who are very pro-Israel, and I'm very pro-Israel, but they do not believe Kamala is pro-Israel enough, even though she has a Jewish husband and she's been very clear and she was great in the convention. And they think Trump is awesome on Israel. And there are enough Jews who are otherwise Democrats who are going to shift, in my opinion, to Donald Trump in Philadelphia and Milwaukee and Phoenix and Atlanta to cause a real frickin' problem. So I am concerned.
So that's interesting because when you stitch together those constituencies, you do end up with perhaps the narrow margin that you need that you referenced in some of these swing districts and swing states. Um, the turnout operation and the voter turnout is something that you point to as well. Doesn't Kamala Harris have a, and I find myself in this odd position because people know I'm sort of a pessimist and I kind of find myself damping down the, what I think is a little bit the over exuberance that people feel around Kamala Harris because there is so much momentum because I think it's in denial of the facts. But I have myself in this odd position with you here of having to talk about Kamala Harris and her ground game as something that really is a positive. So when it comes to turnout, which you've identified as so very important, can't we point to Kamala Harris's ground game in swing states, Richard Greene, that will actually be a favorable variable and asset to her in terms of favoring an outcome in her favor?
Yes. And I'm also, as I shared with you this morning, I'm launching the first ever national presidential elections celebrity civics challenge, because it's one thing to go knock on people's doors or to send them emails or to send them videos. But if the messaging is not solid, then you have limited impact. So, for example, I think there are a couple of core messages, and I want to ask you the difference. Number one is, if you care about reproductive rights and you're like waffling, do I vote? Do I not vote? Do I vote for Trump? If you really strongly care about codifying Roe v. Wade into national law and restoring reproductive rights for all Americans, only one presidential candidate will sign that bill. We just have to be very clear. These are very clear binary choices. Only one presidential candidate will sign the Women's Health Protection Act and restore reproductive rights, and that is Kamala. Only one, on the other hand, will sign a national abortion ban. And if you don't think Donald Trump is going to be presented with a national abortion ban, if they also keep the House and flip one more seat in the Senate beyond West Virginia, then you're smoking crack, right? So we need to present very clear civics lessons in terms of the binary choice. But can I do a little quiz, a test for you on some messaging?
Yeah, but I before you do, I want you just to talk to some of our listeners and viewers who have messaged. One is D. Elliott. Polls are a very, very, very small percentage of the voting population. I think we spend too much time focusing on them. Didn't mean anything for 2016 when Hillary was way ahead, did it? That, I think, really is a cautionary tale, D. Elliott. Thank you. I mean, the undercounting of Trump votes in 2016 and 2020. That's another way in which these polls can really underestimate the power of Trump. But what about polls generally, Richard?
So listen, I think polls are better than nothing, especially when you're looking at trends and you're looking at a whole bunch of polls, right? This average of a whole bunch of polls. But then again, if we look at 2016, yeah, Hillary was way ahead. And then, as I said before, my friend James Comey came out and completely destroyed her last minute momentum. So anything can happen like that. But I'm basing my pessimism, and again, I am so, and you know me, Mark, for a long
Well,
time.
you want Kamala to win. There's no question of that.
Well,
Yeah.
and I'm very glass half full, and I'm very optimistic, and I still think 2 months is plenty of time. I don't want just victory. If we have a small victory, this is going to be in the courts until probably January 19th, if we're lucky. And oh, by the way, if it's tied 269, 269, we could end up literally with JD Vance as our president being sworn in on January 20. That's a whole nother civics quiz. But I've just been shocked by smart people I know who don't want to vote for Kamala, who really have been able to let go of everything Mehdi Hassan said, everything we've seen Donald Trump do over the last 9 years, and they just love the guy. I do
Well,
believe
let
he's
me
sold his soul to the devil, and he
let
has an influence
let
that
me
is.
let me point to a constituency. I know Richard's internet signal's a little in and out, but I do want to. I want you to look at this from Brian. Trump loses 75% of the ovary vote, is what Brian Jennings calls it. He'll lose by 20 million this time, he says. Well, that overstates it in every way, even the verbiage. But what about the women who do get it, Richard? Can't they seriously influence the outcome of this election?
Of course, right? Of course, the women who went out and voted for these abortion initiatives in Ohio and Kansas and whatever, that is massive. But let me address
All
his
right.
name, Brian.
Yeah,
Joe
go
Biden
ahead.
won by 7 million. Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry. Can you hear me,
Yeah, I can go. You're
Mark?
just a
Can
little
you
in
hear
and
me, or
out.
is my
Go ahead. Yeah,
signal
yeah.
off?
Go ahead.
Joe Biden won by 7 million votes in 2020. But he ultimately ended up winning because of this stupid electoral college by 42,880 votes. You know why? Because literally every single one of the million votes that he won by in the popular vote came from California. So we wasted 6,999,999 votes. And that's what's scary about it. You cannot look at the national polling. So here's the question. Speaking of women's reproductive rights, here's two side-by-side messages. If you're Colin Allred, for example, and you are trying to flip Texas from red, Ted Cruz, red to blue, and you say, hi, my name is Colin Allred, and I'm running for Senate in Texas, and I strongly believe in a woman's right to choose, and if elected, I will go back to the United States Senate and fight as hard as I can to codify Roe v. Wade and restore women's reproductive rights, and Ted Cruz will not. That is option number one. What I've been begging the Democratic Party to do, and every candidate, including Colin, is the following. You tell me if there's a difference, and I'd love to hear from your listeners. Hi, my name is Colin Allred. I'm running for Senate in the great state of Texas, and I strongly believe in a woman's right to choose. And I wanted you to know that we are one United States senator short of passing the bill to codify Roe v. Wade and immediately restore reproductive rights. I will go to Washington and be that one vote. My opponent, Ted Cruz, will not.
And that's a
Which
terrific message. Terrific message. I don't know what messages get traction in different places in different races. For example, you're talking about Texas. Maybe that will be a message that gets traction. It certainly should be a message that gets out there. But what issues motivate voters at the end of the day? I think that's a really important thing when it comes to talking points and messaging. And you know this better than anyone because you're kind of the guru of messaging. But do abortion rights drive Democrats to the poll? Will immigration and crime break
all
through
of the above.
to Republicans in the suburbs who might actually consider the move to Kamala Harris? I mean, these are issues that all I think track differently with differing amounts of popularity in different states.
Right. So you go for an MRI and they slice all these different images. I believe we should have an MRI micro engagement approach that's focused on all of these. I think it's BS to say, oh, here, this is the issue. No, like you and I care deeply about animal rights, right? I mean, that's an issue that would motivate some people to vote, or it could be environment, or it could be look at what happened, in Georgia last night, yesterday with the guns. It could be assault weapons. But the point is, we are 4 Democrats away in the House of Representatives from passing any and all of these things. And right now, only 1 Democrat away in the Senate and a president.
That,
So
I think, is the most powerful message just in general, because the things that you mentioned, animal rights, gun rights, et cetera, I don't think they track. I think I mean, I'm not saying they're not important. They're hugely important. But I'm saying that immigration, economy, these are the things that track. And I love the other thing that you mentioned, which is just the je ne sais quoi. I don't know what it is. He just seems like a stronger guy, the alpha leader. That's BS, but it's real. It's the reptilian
so real.
brain thing, you know?
For example, in the sit down with Dana Bash, the visual optics were terrible.
I said the same thing.
Tim Walz looked like a giant, and
And
she
she looks
looked
like
like
a
a
free
midget.
sample. It was crazy. It was awful.
How
It
could
just
her staff not be aware of those things? Because in human communication, body language is actually 55% of the impact you make. And the fact that you are so handsome and you're so authoritative in how you speak, that's why you're the great Mark
Oh, you're
Thompson.
talking about me then? I thank you very much. I didn't want to let that comment. But last thing, just on that, then I've got to let you go. But you're so great, and I will put the bat beam up a little bit more frequently, so you'll come visit again soon. But what I did want to ask you about was something you've just said, which is the way you speak, the way you look. In the case of that interview, she looked diminished because of her size. It was nothing she did. She had no control over that. It's just the way
You need a
CNN set
pillow,
it up.
a
Yeah,
phone book, a pillow,
yeah,
something.
but right, let her sit on something. I couldn't agree more. That said, we've got a debate coming up. The new debate uh, structure will be similar to the old debate structure, okay? Muted microphones while the other person is speaking. Trump will have a fire hose of lies coming out, of course, and your ability to check those lies is somewhat limited in real time. Plus, you want to get out your message if you're Kamala Harris. How do you handicap that, and what would be your strategy going forward, given what you know to be the debate rules?
So again, I'm going to give you the statistic. Body language is 55% of how human beings communicate. Voice tone, having authority, certainty, punctuation at the appropriate, authentic times, is 38%. Words are only 7%. I honestly don't care about policies as much as everyone does. Right now, it's a bidding war. I'll do 50,000 for your home loans. I'll pay for your IVF. I mean, it's all bullshit unless you actually elect enough people who actually believe in that. So, but what people are going to come away with is, and the reason Joe Biden had to drop out, he did not look presidential. He did not look strong. Kamala needs to look decisive, authoritative, alpha female, and strong, and not try to deliver Hillary Clinton white papers on policies that people just are not moved by because they don't believe it's going to happen.
This is interesting. So, in a way, you'd say, don't sit there and try to knock down all of his lies. Worry about your communication and the way you're coming across. And if along the way you can take some out, great, but don't make that a priority.
Not the content of the lies, but the fact that it's like, Mr. Trump, I'm taking notes here. That is your 17th lie. How many are you going to get this time? You're going to break your record? I mean, things like that, where you make the point without getting into the digital detail of it all. Anyway, I love you, man. I know you have
Love
to
you
go.
back. Come visit again. As I say, we'll be in touch. And then, as to follow up on your other idea, let's follow up off the air. And if I can help, you know, I'm always there for you. So appreciate it.
Got it. And if people want to follow me on TikTok, it's at Civics Dean, and go there not just to listen to me, but mainly to watch my 95-year-old mother who nails it every time.
Who is a ping pong champion, I might add.
Yes.
At Civics Dean there on TikTok. Richard Greene, the Civics Dean. Thanks, buddy. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.